What you're looking at is the first war movie ever released, Raising Old Glory Over Morro Castle, otherwise known as Tearing Down the Spanish Flag. Dating from 1898, it was produced during the Spanish-American War, and is consequently the first pro-war film. One might even say it is an early example of propaganda on screen. A number of other early war films came out of the conflict, mostly to be used in newsreels. Of course, these were little more than staged reenactments. And yet, 100 years later, we're still doing the same thing, only our budgets have gotten a little bigger. It seems that we are bound to relive wars on screen, whether they're produced while the war is still raging on, or as we look back, decades later. One would assume we'd never want to trudge up such memories of barbarity and loss. Yet in the past century, war has been a staple in Hollywood. Why are we so obsessed with war? Do these movies encourage or discourage us to support or even volunteer in these conflicts? Do we shape them, or do they shape us? Does it even matter what message the director meant to get across in their work? Perhaps what was intended to be an example of the savagery or the pointlessness of war is only taken as an exciting, well-done battle scene by an audience member. But aren't movies entertainment? Is it then possible to hold both of these opinions at once? These are just some of the questions I have, ones that I'm not sure I even have answers to. But there's one takeaway I do have. It's that war movies are a prime example of the death of the author. Unlike other genres, most people come to these films with their opinion on war already formed. Whether a movie is pro-war or anti-war is perhaps solely up to the audience member. For this video, I'd like to focus on a movie that is a prime example of this idea. It is a perplexing, problematic movie, but one I find to be very fascinating. That film is American Sniper. Despite being one of the top-grossing war dramas of all time, the film has been mired in controversy since its release, with many labeling it as propaganda.
American Sniper, generating big buzz, major questions right now. Some are asking if the record-setting movie glorifies a hero or a killer.
This billboard in Los Angeles, spray-painted with the word murder. And online, a firestorm after comedian Seth Rogen and filmmaker Michael Moore both appeared to take aim at the film.
This is understandable given its subject matter. Chris Kyle, Navy SEAL and the deadliest marksman in U.S. history, with 160 confirmed kills in Iraq. One could argue that a biopic about him would be inherently pro-war. Indeed, I think one could easily take the film this way. There's plenty to support this reasoning. Yet I, and others, feel that there's a very clear anti-war reading to be found here. Director Clint Eastwood has labeled the film as such, and he personally does not support the Iraq War. More than that though, American Sniper reveals the destructive nature of war on the family. It deconstructs masculinity and duty, as our protagonist is forced to reckon with their pitfalls. Scenes of Chris's childhood reveal his strict upbringing, his father teaching him to never leave your rifle in the dirt while out hunting. His father also instills in him the mentality that will guide the rest of Chris's life, that he is a sheepdog, a protector of the innocent from the wolves of the world. In that sense, Chris does not operate so much based on his own choices, but on instinct. It is his instinct to protect his family, of which he has 3 in the film. His real family, his fellow SEAL team members, and finally his country as a family. Yet as the film reveals, by trying to protect them, he ends up almost destroying them. Kyle's instincts are triggered by the 1998 embassy bombings, encouraging him to join up with the SEALs, after which he meets his wife, Taya, and things seem to be going well, until September 11th, and then everything changes. The film fails to contextualize the invasion of Iraq, framing the war as if it were a natural reaction to 9/11. Some criticize the movie for this, labeling it as untruthful. Yet to me, it represents a reality in which thousands of young men will follow their governments into a war because they've been raised to never question their nation's will. After all, the story is told from Kyle's point of view. If he is a sheepdog, then he must follow his master. And he does, completing 4 tours in Iraq. However, with each one, he becomes a more broken man, closing himself off from his wife and kids back home. In battle, he sees his friends die, filling him with guilt. Rather than a defensive or even an invasive conflict, the war becomes a self-perpetuating cycle of vengeance. Scenes of reckless payback are immediately countered by more ambushes, symbolizing that America's involvement in the country is getting itself nowhere. What was thought to be a short conflict ends up dragging on and on, with seemingly no real progress. Kyle increasingly becomes distant from his wife, and even shows callousness over the death of his fellow SEAL, claiming that his friend's disillusionment is what killed him. It eventually takes Taya threatening to leave to make Chris realize how lost he has become. Towards the end of the film, he finally, literally reaches out for help, leaving his rifle in the dirt. At last, he is able to shirk his father's unrealistic, overbearing expectations of masculinity. Yet the war has done its damage, and Kyle's PTSD means he will never be the same man again. He is able to find solace in helping fellow veterans with trauma, until one day, one of them murders him. If this were not a true story, one might take it to be a metaphor, the ultimate cost of war. Even if you physically survive, you cannot mentally escape. PTSD will catch up and eventually envelop you whole.